Somewhere on the internet right now, millions of people are absolutely convinced that an entire advanced civilization was deliberately erased from history. They believe a global empire, one with limitless free energy and breathtaking architecture, once spanned the earth. They believe a great flood of mud swallowed its cities, burying them for centuries. They believe the grand old buildings still standing in our capitals today were not built by us at all, but inherited from this forgotten world. And some, going even further, believe its people were giants. Mainstream historians call it a fantasy. Cartographers call it nonsense. And yet, this theory refuses to die. In fact, it is spreading faster than ever. So the real question is not whether this lost empire ever existed. The deeper, more revealing question is this: why do so many people so desperately need it to have? To understand the strange grip this idea holds on the modern mind, you first have to understand exactly what it claims. It is known as the Tartaria theory, and at its heart is a single, seductive idea: that hidden beneath the official history we were all taught lies another history, the history of a vast and magnificent civilization called Tartaria, or the Tartarian Empire. According to its believers, Tartaria was not some small, forgotten kingdom. It was a global superpower, technologically advanced, peaceful, and responsible for the most beautiful architecture on the entire planet. And then, somehow, it was wiped out, and wiped from our memory. The believers point to what they call the mud flood. They claim a great catastrophe buried whole cities under layers of earth, and they offer what looks, at first glance, like evidence. All over the world you can find old buildings whose ground floor doors and windows sit strangely far below the level of the street, half sunken into the ground. To the believers, this is proof. The ground rose up and swallowed the first floors of buildings that once stood far taller. The mud flood buried a whole world, and what we walk past today is only its buried remains. From there, the theory spirals outward into the extraordinary. The Tartarians, some say, were not ordinary humans at all, but giants, and the oversized doors and vast archways of old buildings were built to fit them. They supposedly harnessed unlimited wireless energy, beaming free power through the air long before our modern electrical grids ever existed. The grand domed capitals, the star-shaped fortresses, the ornate stone palaces of the 19th century, none of these were built by us. They were inherited, the theory insists, from the lost empire. Even the Great Pyramids and the White House have been folded into the story. It sounds like the plot of a fantasy novel. And yet, here is the strangest part of all. The entire theory is built upon something that is absolutely, undeniably real. If you open up old maps of the world, from the 17th, 18th, and even the 19th centuries, you will see a single word printed across the vast interior of Asia again and again: Tartary, Great Tartary, Independent Tartary, Russian Tartary, Chinese Tartary. It is right there, sprawled across the center of the continent, written in the same bold letters as any other great land. And this is precisely where the entire conspiracy is born. Because believers look at those old maps and they ask a simple, powerful question. If Tartary was real enough to be printed on every map for centuries, why were we never taught about it? Why was it erased? Here is the answer that the conspiracy always leaves out. Tartary was never an empire at all. It was simply a name, a label that map makers in Western Europe used for centuries to describe the vast, sprawling, poorly understood interior of Asia, the great steppes and the endless forests of Siberia stretching from the Caspian Sea all the way to the Pacific. The word came from the Tatars, the nomadic peoples who rode across those lands. Calling that territory Tartary was no different from ancient map makers writing unknown land or labeling a distant region the Orient. It was a geographic placeholder, not a nation, not a government, and certainly not a hidden global superpower. It is worth knowing where this whole idea first crawled out of the shadows. The roots of the theory did not begin online. They trace back decades to a fringe Russian mathematician named Anatoly Fomenko, who proposed that recorded history was largely a fabrication and that Russia itself was the hidden center of an older, greater civilization. From there, the idea was taken up by nationalist writers who insisted Tartaria was simply the true, suppressed name of Russia, deliberately ignored by a jealous West. Only later, sometime around 2016, did the theory escape that narrow frame and explode across the global internet, where it shed its political baggage and became the strange, shapeless mystery we see today, complete with its giants and its mud floods. And the rest of the theory falls apart just as easily under any honest scrutiny. Those grand old buildings that believers insist no one could possibly have built, they have architects, they have blueprints, they have construction photographs, building permits, and newspaper records announcing their completion. The Singer Building, the old Pennsylvania station, the glittering pavilions of the 1915 World's Fair, all of them were documented, built, and in many cases later demolished, right out in the open, by ordinary people. As for those strange half-buried doors, they are explained by something far more ordinary than a flood. Cities raise their streets over time. Roads are repaved, layer upon layer, for decade after decade, until the ground level slowly climbs above the old foundations. No mud flood required, just time and traffic. And yet, knowing all of this, the theory still will not die. So we have to ask the question that matters most of all. Why? Why does an idea so easily debunked continue to capture millions of imaginations? Part of the answer lies deep in human psychology. We are storytellers by nature, and we are drawn, almost helplessly, to the idea of a hidden truth. There is something irresistible about believing that the world we see is only a fraction of what once was, that somewhere beneath our feet lies a lost golden age, greater and more wondrous than our own. The Tartaria theory offers people exactly that: a secret history, a mystery to solve, a sense that they have seen through a grand deception that everyone else has missed. But there is something darker fueling it too. In an age of deepening distrust, many people no longer believe the institutions that record our history. Museums, universities, governments, all are viewed with deep suspicion. And into that empty space steps a theory that whispers, "You were lied to. The authorities hid the truth from you." For someone already wary of the official story, that message does not feel like a conspiracy. It feels like validation. There is also a quieter, almost melancholic reason. One architecture critic described the theory as the QAnon of architecture, arguing that it reflects a genuine cultural sadness, a longing for a lost world of beauty and craftsmanship. People look at the cold, plain glass towers of the modern city, and then they look at the ornate, human-scaled stone buildings of the past, and they feel that something precious was lost. The Tartaria theory gives that sadness an explanation, and someone to blame. And finally, there is the great engine that spreads it all: social media. Scholars who study the theory note that it thrives on image-based platforms, where a single old photograph of an empty street or a half-buried doorway can be stripped of all context and presented as proof. It is, they say, less a coherent story than a meme, an endless flood of haunting images that simply feel true, even when they are not. And that, perhaps, is the most important lesson hiding inside this whole phenomenon. The Tartaria theory is not really about Tartaria. It is about us. It is about a world that can feel overwhelming and disconnected, where people hunger for meaning, for beauty, for a sense that something greater once existed. The myth of a lost empire is, in the end, a mirror. It shows us how badly we want to believe that humanity was once capable of something magnificent, and how hard it is to accept that the truth, ordinary, messy, and deeply human, might simply be enough. So here's the question I want to leave you with. We may know that the Tartarian Empire never existed, but the longing that created it is very real. So what does it say about our modern world that so many people would rather believe in a beautiful lie than accept the history they were given? I want to hear your answer. Drop it in the comments below. If this video made you think differently about the stories we tell ourselves, share it with someone who loves a good mystery. And subscribe, because the next idea we unravel might be the one that changes how you see the world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, and never accept that the obvious answer is the only answer. I am Arif Hasan, and this is AH History.